Good morning. Let us now continue our discussion of Mahesh Elkanchwar's plays by discussing another play that he wrote, which in English is translated as The Old Stone Mansion. The play, unlike Elkanchwar's earlier plays, it does not deal with abstract philosophical ideas of existential unease or a existential crisis, but is more. This is one of his plays which is more grounded in a particular social and economic reality. The play itself was inspired by the Russian playwright Anton Chekhov's last play called The Cherry Orchard. In the Cherry Orchard, you have an aristocratic Russian landowner who returns to her family estate, which includes a large, and well-known cherry orchard. And just before it has been auctioned to pay the mortgage. Right? So she returns to the family estate just as the orchard has been auctioned to pay the mortgage. The landowner is not very, doesn't take any action to, save the estate, and allows the sale of the estate to the son of a former serf. And the family eventually leaves to the sound of the cherry orchard being cut down. So the story itself is reflective of larger social and political and economic transformations, in around the turn of the 20th century, with the rise of the middle class and the abolition of serfdom in the mid-19th century, and of course the declining power of the aristocracy. So you see a very clear impact of influence of Chekhov's play The Cherry Orchard on Mahesh Elkanchwar's play The Old Stone Mansion, where again you have characters representing a social and economic transition in the status of landed Brahmins in rural Vidarbha in Maharashtra. So you again, just like the Cherry Orchard, Mahesh Elkanchwar deploys characters in the play that who represent different ages, different historical and social and affective economic ages across generations. So if you look at the opening description of the stage directions, this again gives you a sense of how it's a description of the dilapidated ancestral home of the Deshpandes in Vidarbha. So the stage directions, the description goes like this. The ancient, respectable but dilapidated mansion of the Deshpandes of Dharangaon, a small village somewhere in Vidarbha. There's a veranda in front and a bedroom to the left. To the right of the veranda is a room which also serves as a drawing room, a middle room beyond the veranda, and a suggestion of more rooms further behind. A number of chairs, old, half-broken, assorted, stand on the veranda, and a swing, a very old carpet on the floor, a few bolsters in a sorry state, a carved mahogany bed, and a magnificent mirror in room A. There's an antique iron chest in B. Old steel trunks are piled in the middle room behind the veranda. The apron of the stage is the courtyard. So you see the dilapidated and broken and state of the old stone mansion, which is in a state of disuse. And you also have, for example, the Dadi, the oldest member of the family, who is constantly calling out to her son Venkatesh, whom she doesn't know is dead. So the play begins with the death of the patriarch Venkatesh, and his mother, who seems to have lost her mind, is constantly calling out to her son, thinking that he is still alive. Right? So the Dadi herself seems to symbolize a forgotten age, an age which has been bypassed by time. And then you have many other characters. For example, Prabha, who is Venkatesh's daughter. You have Ai, who is Venkatesh's widow. You have Ranju, who is the eldest son, the eldest grandson, that is the patriarch's son, Bhaskar. You have the patriarch has three sons, Bhaskar, Sudhir, and Chandu. And Bhaskar's wife, the eldest son's wife, is called Vahini. And younger son, Sudhir's wife, is called Anjali. And Bhaskar and Vahini have a son and a daughter called Parag and Ranju. And Sudhir has a son called Abhay who does not appear on stage, but we know that he is somewhere in Bombay when his parents come for the patriarch's funeral back in Vidarbha. So these are the characters of the play, and Chandu, of course, the last son, is unmarried, and he's the one who actually takes care of his parents and does all the menial labor on the farm. So you see, suggestions of the impact of modernization on the village. So, for example, Ranju is this young, precocious girl, Bhaskar's daughter Ranju, who is exposed to the outside world through magazines like Filmfare or the radio, and she often listens to film songs on the radio. You also have Vahini, who is a very disapproving mother. She doesn't like the way Ranju is spending her time. She wants her to study just about enough to find her a bridegroom, and so she wants to actually get her married. And you also have the introduction of characters like Sudhir, the younger brother, and his wife Anjali, and there is a clear description of the class and the caste difference between Anjali and the others. So the Anjali is a Konkanastha Brahmin, and she seems to live up to the reputation of her caste community because she is fair, she is well educated, she is beautiful, she works, and she is not probably very familiar with the rural lifestyles. She doesn't really know what it means to actually work hard in the fields or work out and do hard labor. She's not exposed to the sun very much, so she's perceived as someone who is wealthy, comes from a very comfortable family, but also is probably a little elitist and snooty. That's the suggestion that is given there, and in fact, her son Abhay seems to, as it were, inherit her genes, because he is somebody who was hardworking, studies well, has done well in school, is also a cricketer. So much to the contrast of Bhaskar's son, who is Parag, who spends a lot of his time just roaming around. He wastes away his time on alcohol and drugs. So there's a clear contrast between Abhay and Parag, and so of course the encounter between Sudhir and Anjali and Vahini and Bhaskar suggest certain very clear differences in their lifestyles, and so for example you see the on page 139, you see, for example, the Vahini's perception of her sister-in-law Anjali. She says, look, she's a Bombay girl, born there, lived there before marriage and after, and daughter of a Konkanastha. How could she bond with your people? Now, don't say or do anything till the rites are over, right? So they have all come, they've gathered together to complete the funeral rites of their father. And Vahini also says they came by taxi. You think they travel by bus like us. So there's this perception that they are fairly comfortable, and there's a very clear social difference between Sudhir and Anjali and Bhaskar and Vahini, who have spent all their lives in the village. What is also interesting is the tractor that's always stationed in the courtyard in front of the house, and many of the actors, the characters who step in and out of the house, are often their path is often obstructed by the tractor. It's an old rusted tractor which is no longer used, and the tractor itself becomes a symbol of the imminent social and economic decline and changing fortunes of the Deshpande household as they lose their traditional landed status and no longer have the kind of power, the ritual and economic power that they once had. But so the play is also set within the larger context of certain transformations that have led to the erosion of the rural fabric of the village, with for example land reforms, the introduction of land reforms and the redistribution of land among caste groups who have hitherto been landless or have worked as landless laborers on upper caste landlords' lands. So the land that was once that the Deshpandes once possessed has shrunk, and now they have a smaller piece of land where it is not very economical to actually have a tractor and use a tractor to actually cultivate a small patch of land. So but they still retain the tractor as a symbol of their erstwhile ritual power, economic power, right? So the tractor is ever present on stage as a symbol of the empty and hollow social and economic status of the landed Brahmins. There's also suggestions that there are many other caste groups, lower caste groups in the village who have resorted to other kinds of professions like the brewing of illicit alcohol and liquor. Some of the people who used to work for the Deshpandes, the cooks, or the washermen have moved to the city of Bombay for better employment opportunities, and so there is a change, a transformation in the social and cultural fabric of the village. You also have, for example, Prabha, who is the patriarch's daughter. She's the only daughter, and she is the sister of Bhaskar's sister. Her perspective also is significant because she perceives also the change, the shift in the control of the household from her mother to her eldest sister-in-law Vahini, and she in turn feels rather neglected and powerless in the hands of Vahini's presence in the household, because she is also someone who always aspired to be educated, to work. She's trying to escape the stifling patriarchal atmosphere of the household. She wants to make her own fortunes, but she's not able to till the very end. So she does feel betrayed and lost in that dilapidated house. So you have instances of this, for example, on 141, where Prabha says, "I must live off whatever crumbs you brothers throw me now. You're all right. You'll take your share and go off to Bombay. But let me tell you, Sudhir," she's telling her Bombay brother, "Sudhir, it's not even 5 days since Tatyaji died. 5 days, and Vahini has changed already. The house keys moved instantly into her keep. And I went instantly into the shadows of the back room. When Tatyaji was alive, you couldn't hear Vahini's footfall on the veranda, but within 5 days, her orders are heard away outside the Vada." Right? So this captures the sudden shift in power and the growing visible presence of Vahini in the household as the eldest daughter-in-law. And you also see again on scene 2 of the first act, 143. There's the discussion around the tractor. Right. So Sudhir asks. Bhaskar wonders if the tractor can be sold in the city, and Sudhir says, "Who'd want to buy a tractor in Mumbai? And anyhow, there isn't much left of it now. It's half buried in the ground. Every time I come, it's sunk a few inches more. The body is rusted and rotting." Bhaskar, "Nobody's used it in 20 years. Sudhir, money down the drain. You should have sold it long ago." Bhaskar, "You think we dared suggest any such thing to Tatyaji?" Tatyaji is their father, the patriarch who's just died. "It was nothing but a whim. We'll buy a tractor, he went on, and bought it one day. Fine. We thought it might be useful. Nothing of the kind. First of all, our land was tilled by the tenants. Now the landlord has bought a tractor, he'll till the land himself, they thought. They were dead set against it. Worse, it could break down all the time. Once broken, it stayed that way." Right? So the acquisition of the tractor 20 years ago made the other caste groups who once worked on their lands feel that now they don't have a job. They won't need to till the land of the Deshpandis anymore, and so they probably decide to move away, probably go to the city if possible, in search of employment. Then Vahini says, "You think you get good mechanicals in the village? So there it stands. Sudhir, you could have hired it out to other landlords." Bhaskar, "Who's got that kind of land around here? 2 to 5 acres. 12 is the limit. Who needs a tractor for that? It's not as if I didn't buy. But people should be able to afford it. Mind you, I had already told Tatyaji that we should buy 15 buffaloes instead of the tractor and start a dairy." Right? So this, of course, is very revealing of the transformations in the social caste fabric of the village, where land reforms have been introduced, and they have a smaller patch of land now, 2 to 5 acres. 12 is the limit, he says. And who needs a tractor for a small piece of land? It would have been more profitable, Bhaskar says, if they had bought 15 buffaloes instead of a tractor and started a dairy. Then Ranju says, "Why didn't you buy a posh car instead?" Remember, Ranju is one of those young girls who aspires to make it big. She has dreams of leading a rich and free life, which doesn't happen towards the end of the play. And so again, Vahini says that the Deshpandis decided to be modern and put a tractor there. Forget about usefulness, as long as we can make a show of wealth. So we have the tractor in front and the palanquin at the back, right? So it's just an empty show of wealth. They want the others to believe that the Deshpandes are wealthy. They don't depend on other caste groups to till their land. They have a tractor to till the land, and so therefore they are modern. And then, of course, there are other suggestions of, for example, a cook who left the Deshpande household to work for a restaurant at the bus stand. So the opening up of restaurants and in the village, of course, is again a sign of the impact of modernization in the village. So even though the cook's father and grandfather spent their lives in the Deshpande kitchen, now he couldn't care less. He belongs to a new generation of people who wants to make his own living by working in a new restaurant that has been opened in the village. And they're also getting well paid for it. So they get more salaries than they ever did working for the Deshpandes. The house also is bound by the rights of pollution. Just after the funeral, Ai is very concerned that the house should be purified of the pollution of the death. Right? So she is very concerned about. She still observes these ritual rites of pollution, and that comes with death. Now, the interesting thing is that Bhaskar, the eldest son of the family, who has never left the village, who has worked on their ancestral land, and who is now the new patriarch of the family, refuses to actually acknowledge the fact that they have long lost their financial and social status in the village. They no longer have the same status they once had. So he's very stubborn, and he insists on actually having a very lavish funeral for his father. But so he is determined to actually stick on to the ritual and social reputation they once had, when they have actually lost a lot of land and wealth because of the new land reforms and the newfound mobility of other lower caste groups from the village to the city. So he wants to be very extravagant on the father's funeral rites, even though he can't afford it. And he even asks his brother Sudhir for money, but Sudhir doesn't have any money because he has spent all his money. His money is all locked in, repaying back the mortgage on his house in Bombay. So the interesting thing is that Vahini and Bhaskar assume that Sudhir and Anjali lead rather comfortable, if not lavish, lives in Bombay, but they don't realize the difficulties of living in a city where everything is a lot more expensive, and they hardly find time for themselves. So all they do is they work from day to night. Trying to make ends meet, trying to pay off their loans, trying to pay off the mortgage, and they don't realize that the Bhaskar and his family don't realize their financial struggles, because they assume that anybody who's in the city must be well off, must be comfortable, but they don't have a sense of urban poverty. So it's so just like how Bhaskar and Vahini believe that or assume that Sudhir and Anjali are very comfortable and wealthy living in the city, Ranju also has this false impression of the modern world of consumerism, and she, the way she listens to the radio, or later on she elopes with her English tutor. She learns English from her tutor, but she's not able to speak English very well, but she wants to be able to learn to speak English as a sign of class, and so she elopes with her tutor only to be deceived by him. So these are these perceptions which are very interestingly built up in the play, where you have a rural landed family which has these rather positive illusions about the city of Bombay, where they think is the city of fortune and wealth. Then there's another character who doesn't actually appear on stage, who is Bansilal. Bansilal, their grocer, right, who once sold them vegetables, but has now actually become rather wealthy, and he has his eyes on the land of the Deshpandes. So he knows that the Deshpandes are in debt, and so he is waiting for them to sell the land to him. So he obviously has some newfound wealth. He's become rich. So that there's a discussion of that on page 145, where Vahini says, "Forget old and new. You can put away the groceries in the storeroom where Chandu Bhauji brings them. You must get the groceries today. Do you hear, Chandu Bhauji?" This is Vahini telling her brother-in-law Chandu to bring vegetables. Chandu says, I will, Vahini, and Bhiva's chopped the firewood but not brought it in, the rascal. Chandu, I'll bring it in. Vahini to Bhaskar, you'd better send Chandu Bhauji to Nagarmal for the groceries. Give him a note. Bhaskar, why? What's happened? Chandu, Bansi Lal is asking for arrears. So the Deshpandis are so sunk, ridden with debt, that they haven't paid their own vegetable seller the amount that they owe him. Vahini to Sudhir, Chandu Bhauji went to get 2 boxes of matches yesterday and he sent them back. Bhaskar, tell that bugger the Dharangaonkar Deshpandis have never died on their debts. So what if Tatyaji is dead? We're all here. Tell him I'll sell the tin off the roof to repay him. When this fellow's father came from Marwar with nothing but a lota, he made his home in our stable. He's forgotten those days now. Why did you take what that 2-bit man said? Right? So Bhaskar refuses to acknowledge the fact that he is no longer as wealthy as he used to be, and he doesn't command or enjoy the same ritual and economic power that he once had in the village. And now he's determined to sell off if the roof of his house, literally sell off the house if he has to repay the what he owes the vegetable seller. And then he also Bhaskar asks Chandu to ask Sudhir for 700 to 800 rupees for the funeral ceremony. And Sudhir says, I don't have that kind of money. Where will I produce so much? Right? So they can't believe that Sudhir is not able to afford, cannot give in his share of money to actually conduct the funeral rites. And then on page 149, Anjali describes their financial constraints in the city. Anjali tells Prabha that he's a Deshpande through and through, talking about Sudhir. Plus he has high BP. You think it's all fun and games for us, but let me tell you, only we know how we manage. Pull the sheet over your head, and your feet are uncovered. Pull it down and your head's uncovered. First it was a battle to find a two-room flat. Now it's a battle to pay off the loan. At least here you own the roof over your head and the food comes off the land. Right? So you see the ironic contrast there, that the Deshpandis are debt-ridden. They still have a small piece of land from which they are able to grow a few things, and they have their own house. But in the city, it's a competitive rat race where it's terribly expensive. There's a much higher standard of living, and they struggle with great difficulty to actually find a small 2-room flat on rent. But then they have to also pay off the loan on their house. So it's not easy for them. And Prabha doesn't believe Anjali when she says that she is poor, despite the fact that she is a Konkanastha Brahmin. There's also no electricity in the Deshpande household, which is interesting because they don't have any electrical appliances. They don't have any access to agricultural technology in the village, and so they've not even tried to get, let's say, a TV connection or an electric connection in the house. So you see that in some sense, they are also they're still living a life that has now long disappeared. And they refuse to acknowledge the fact that times have changed, right? And that they no longer command the kind of wealth and power they once had. Scene 3 of Act 1 again describes the possibility of Ranju having an affair with her English tutor. And Ranju seems to be an extremely restless and flighty character. She doesn't seem to enjoy living in the house very much. She wants to escape. There's constant impulse for the younger women of the house to escape the suffocation of living in a dilapidated, dying house, in a dying age, as it were. Then, similarly, Parag, her brother, Ranju's brother, is again a boy who's wastrel. He spends hours outside the house, roaming around, consuming alcohol. He's a drunk. He has drugs. He doesn't study, right? And so there's a contrast being made between Parag and Abhay, who seems to be a very, hard-working young man who is now also participating in the cricket tournament. So we don't see Abhay on stage, but there's this impression built that he may be like his mother, extremely promising. And so there's a very clear, divide between the rural and the urban, and a lot of these perceptions are imagined. There's an imagined divide between the urban and the rural, where the urban has made incursions into the village, And those who live in the village have this false perception of those who live in the city as people who are well off, who are comfortable, who are educated, who are upper class, upper caste too, and so on. There's also this perception that those people who live in the city are liars, right? They distort things. Like Anjali, people don't believe Anjali when she says anything. They always think that she's trying to deceive the Deshpande family because she's too tight-fisted, right? She's too miserly to give away any money, right? So there's this other impression of those who live in the city are wealthy, but they're also very tight-fisted. They're not generous. In the beginning of Act 2, you have a description of how things have not changed in the Deshpande household. So they don't have TV. So Vahini says that this place has no entertainment for children. They get bored, poor souls. When she starts sniffing and sniveling, I say, "Go, don't pester the life out of me," referring to Ranju, the restless daughter of hers. Sudhir also has his own TV now. He's bought his own TV, so he stopped going to watch films outside. And Ranju is fascinated by the fact that her uncle has bought a TV, and she wishes that she had a TV. And Anjali says that you can buy anything in Bombay on installment. But Vahini cannot afford a TV because she doesn't have an electrical connection at home. Bhaskar says it's not dark or anything. It's not dark despite the fact that they don't have electricity. It's all a question of habit. We don't find it dark. And you think it's any good having a connection? 4 days of the week, there's no power. People installed pumps in place of their water wheels. Now they're regretting it. Half their orchards have dried up. The government is happy because it has given electricity to the village, and the people are happy because they have connections. But if you ask me, there's more loss than gain in it. Right? So Bhaskar is a man of the older age. He refuses to change with the times, and he insists that there's more loss than a gain. People have lost more than they've gained by installing pumps in place of water wheels. So, on page 164 and 165, Bhaskar is very anxious to show to the world that they are wealthy and privileged. But despite the fact that they've actually lost many of their precious, brass buckets, they've sold many of their bath vessels in order to redeem their debts, right? They have sold 2 copper vessels. They, and then he says that we didn't make a fortune out of them, as in fortune out of selling all these old pots and pans. Let me assure you, when we sell old pots, do you think we can go out into the open market with them like others? It's all hush hush by the back door. We mustn't show cracks in the facade, must be, right? So he doesn't want to actually show the reality to the world, that they are actually on the brink of bankruptcy and poverty. So the question of honor and reputation is very important. Sudhir says that we just about manage with both of us slogging from 7 in the morning till 9 at night. Still, you won't see as much as a drop of butter or milk or curds in our plates even one day of the year. You should try living in Bombay and coping. Every step costs money, right? So it's not like Sudhir is leading a very comfortable life. He struggles probably a lot more in the city than these people struggle in the village. Then it's Prabha's turn to express her disappointment and disenchantment with her life because her father did not let her go to college in Amravati, and now she wants to go to to college. But then the Deshpande girls, she says, weren't supposed to live anywhere by themselves to study, all for their family prestige and honor. Never mind if our lives were reduced to dust. Right? So women have no choice but to keep up the honor and prestige of the family and not step out of the household. So they have no freedom whatsoever. So Prabha also wanted an educated husband, but then Bhaskar dismisses her wishes and desires. She says, Prabha says, that's right, first stop me from studying and then blame me for it. Weren't you, as brothers, responsible in any way? You, Sudhir, every time you came here, you said you looked for a match in Bombay. You never found time for me, did you? You couldn't even manage a simple thing like sending me books. Don't think I'm panting to get married. It's done with now. It's too late. But don't think that'll stop me from holding a mirror up to your faces. In fact, Chandu is the only one in the entire family who is unquestioningly loyal to his parents and to his family. He sacrifices his own personal life, his own happiness. He's not married, and he takes care of the entire family. He does all the hard labor of bringing vegetables, of tilling the land, of cleaning the house, and so on. So Bhaskar, as I said earlier, is hell bent on feeding the entire village on the 13th day of the funeral, because he wants the entire village to believe that he is that he upholds his ritual and caste power, right? Then Bhaskar decides to mortgage the orchard to perform the funeral rites. They initially think of giving out the gold jewelry of the family, but then Vahini refuses. He said she refuses to give the ancestral jewelry of the family. But then Sudhir is unwilling to actually get the farm mortgaged, because the farm belongs to all three brothers. So Sudhir says the orchard will not be mortgaged. When have we ever been able to redeem mortgaged land? This strip of 12 acres is all that remains. Let's keep it. We'll never be able to buy such fertile land again. And also, if I suddenly need money in the future, I must have my share of the land. So Bhaskar is very upset, and he asks him, what share of the land are you talking about? Considering I've spent so much of money on your education and sent you, to study outside, and now you're working in Bombay, you have no right, you're not entitled to your share of the land. Sudhir reprimands him, rebukes him, and says that it was Tatyaji, it's in their father's money that he spent. It was not Bhaskar's own money, but it was their father's wealth, money that he spent on Sudhir's education. Sudhir said, Tatyaji spent the money. Bhaskar says, you're talking about right, Sudhir, but you're forgetting your education. You think it came at no cost. Sudhir says, Tatyaji spent that money. Bhaskar, only in name. You know that as well as I do. He passed on the whole responsibility of your education, your marriage to me, and sat back. Did that cost nothing? And here you are demanding your share. Sudhir, look, Bhav, I've had this thrown at me a little too often. My education, my marriage. Now let me tell you something. You didn't spend out of your pocket for my education and marriage. Didn't I have anything here 20 years ago? Wasn't there enough land in my name? Expenditure on me came from the income of that land. But that ended 20 years ago. Since then, you've been living off that income. What about that? Why go on with, I did this, I did that? Rubbish. Did you ever give me a single paisa from my land, or even a measure of grain? So Sudhir seems to be, torn between these two worlds of, working away in the city. He's become an urban dweller, and now he also wants a share of he still has loyalties, ties to the family, but he also has ties to the land, to the ancestral land, and he demands his share of the land. Bhaskar says, you should come and take what's yours. Sudhir, are we beggars to come and take things? The question is whether you are big-hearted enough to give me anything. Earlier, I used to spend my leave here, but you kept hinting I was saving my salary staying here. So I swore not to come too often, and even when I did, not to stay for too long. I kept away for years at a time, but you couldn't stand that either. Why are you calling me greedy then? Bhaskar then retorts, saying, are you through? Yes, I agree with everything you say. I didn't give you your income, neither cash nor grain, true. But did you ever feel like asking me once in all these years how the land was doing? I took Ai to Amravati for operation. I had to set up house there for 2 months. Then came Tatyaji's illness. You think that didn't cost money? Sudhir, the same thing again. Why do you think it was your money that you spent on Ai and Tatyaji? Everything belonged to them. Why do you make out that they were obliged to you? Bhaskar, come here once and see for yourself. If the harvest is good 1 year, it's bad for the next 3. Sudhir, how can there be a bad harvest on such well-watered land? Bhaskar, then the land went to the tenants. We had to fight it out in the law courts. The minute a hearing was announced, I had dropped everything and rushed to Amravati. I lost so much money during that. From top to bottom, they were all Brahmin haters. Every one of them. Didn't allow a single verdict to go in our favor. Whining and dining top officials isn't something I can do. You don't know how difficult it is for Brahmins to survive as farmers nowadays. So this is a reflection of the larger reality of Brahmins, who are now no longer the rich landlords they once were, and the fact that they now have to also confront an entire bureaucracy of non-Brahmins, people who also hate Brahmins for the kind of rich social and cultural capital that they have and had. And so that's the new social reality of the landed Brahmins of Maharashtra. Sudhir, so how do the others manage? Bhaskar, have you seen how? There were 7 Brahmin families in this village. 3 left long ago. There's no one left to light a lamp in their homes. Of the remaining four, two are priests and one a teacher, all deep in debt. So all the Brahmin families that once lived in the village are now deep in debt. Many of them have actually left the village, right, in search of better fortunes. With us, the facade is big and the debts are big. Other castes are doing fine. They open a liquor shop and soon they've built a large house. This is the new fortunes of the other caste groups in the village. Some have bought trucks, others are in brokerage, and there's always politics as the last resort. Are we capable of doing any of these things? Times have changed, but our expenses remain unchanged. Festivals, family rituals, annual death rites. You have left all this to me and gone off. The Ganapati Gauri festival alone costs a good 7 or 800 rupees, right? So Bhaskar has not changed with the times. He still wants to spend on festivals, on family rituals, on annual death rites. While the other castes have actually gained a new mobility. They've opened liquor stores and they've built large houses on the earnings. They've also bought trucks and some of them are in brokerage. And then there's politics. Then Bhaskar says, I don't mean to sell the entire place. We'll mortgage just the part at the back that's broken. We talked and talked but never got around to repairing it. And now it's sinking. Bansilal's had his eyes on it for years. In fact, he has offered to buy it. So the grocer offers to buy the back part of the house, the broken part, and redeem the money that they owe the grocer. But the problem is that the back part of the broken part of the house, the back, is in their mother's name, Ai's name. So while the front part of the house belongs to the four siblings, the three brothers and the sister, the father, the patriarch who died, had planned to build a two-room flats on Ai's portion, the mother's portion of the flat, and rent them out. But that does not happen, right? And so now they've decided to actually sell Ai's share of the house to redeem their debts to Bansilal. And Bhaskar also asked Sudhir to actually share the expenses of paying Bansilal back. Ai is also willing to actually sell her share of the house for the welfare of the family, even though her son Chandu doesn't want Ai to sell her share of the house. He in fact offers to sell or in fact transfer his own share of the farm land to his mother, right? But then his mother will not have it. And finally, of course, they decide to sell the orchard at the back because that's the only way that they can actually make money to redeem their debts. And the two women, Prabha and Ai, have an interesting conversation towards the end of Act 2, where they, Prabha wishes that she could get access to the family jewelry, to her share of the family jewelry, and sell it off, and and use the money to actually move away from the family with her mother, take care of her mother, and probably find a job. So, but that doesn't happen because Ranju and her tutor, they steal the family jewelry and they escape with it. Right? They elope, and of course the tutor, of course, betrays Ranju, and then she has to be brought back by Sudhir secretly in a taxi, so that the other people in the village don't actually discover that Ranju has run away with another man. So he brings her back in a private car to save the face of the family. Right? And Prabha, of course, is defeated. Women, it's clear that now women have to accept certain foregone possibilities of freedom. And there's now they have to, Prabha has no choice but to accept the fact that she will never have the opportunity to move away from the family and live her own life. So even her attempt to actually get hold of her share of the ancestral jewelry is lost once Ranju and her tutor elope, stealing the jewelry with them. So there's also a very poetic scene before the theft, where Vahini is slowly wearing the ancestral jewelry that Bhaskar gives her, and she can feel the burden and the prestige that earlier daughters-in-law like her of the Deshpande family bore, as they wore the jewelry. They were marked as upper caste Brahmin daughters-in-law, right? So they bore the prestige and honor of the family. And that's what Vahini imagines as she's slowly wearing the jewelry, but then she has to remove it. because they have no choice but to at some point sell the family jewelry, much to their own unhappiness. So they're not willing to do it, because for them the honor and prestige of the family, which is now no longer backed by economic wealth, rests in those jewels, right? So the whole idea of gold is also being contrasted to the idea of hard money, of cash, which has a certain liquidity, a certain mobility, a certain exchange value, but then gold itself is just dead wealth. Right? It just remains fixed. It does not grow. It does not diminish, and so it just remains this fixed, immobile metaphor, hollow metaphor of the social and cultural status and honor of the Deshpande family. So just to look at a few of the passages, one of course is the conversation between Ai and Prabha on Prabha's lost opportunities to study and to get a job. Ai says, Prabha, I said a contented farewell to happiness long ago, when I saw I wasn't meant to have it. One should willingly give up what one cannot have. But Prabha wants to study, she wants to stand on her own feet. She said, I don't want to look to anyone for charity. Let me go to Amravati. Ai says, what will Bhaskar say? Prabha, let him say what he likes. Ai, don't you understand? They'll devour you bit by bit. And when they are done, they'll throw you away aside like junk. They are putting up with you now because you work. What will you do when you're worn out? Those two cannot see beyond their wives and children. Ai, love always runs forward, dear. I have no expectations from anybody. All I ask is that God close my eyes soon. But my heart is heavy for Chandu. He toils like a beast, poor soul. He has no education, no wife, no children. No one he can call his own. He stayed single because you weren't married. There's time, a whole future. He might be sick, in pain. The worry eats me up inside. And whom do I have? Prabha asks. Prabha, we really ruined your life, dear. You were the cleverest of them all, and you loved your studies. But that was his nature. Nobody could act against his word. For him, it was just one thing. Why do girls need education? How much I pleaded with him, I swear to God I did. Times have changed now. So many girls of your age have gone ahead and studied. They work, they earn. I admire them so much, but we village people just didn't have the vision in those days. Right? So this is again an instantiation, illustration of how the Deshpandis have not changed with the times. Then this is later on, Prabha hopes to get a share of the ancestral jewelry, and so that she can sell it and use the money to get a job, find a house, and then get a new job, and probably give tuitions to make ends meet. Then on 188 is a moving scene where Vahini slowly wears the jewelry that adorns herself with the jewelry of her ancestors, and she feels blessed to be a link in the line of Deshpandis, of the lineage of Deshpandis, as the daughter-in-law who will now inherit all the and will actually get to wear all the ancestral jewelry. And then later on 190, when they discover that Ranju has eloped with her English tutor and taken all the jewelry along with her, right? So there's the entire family is shocked, and they lament the loss of the jewelry. They don't know what to do. And finally Sudhir manages to bring Ranju back, who has been deceived by the English tutor with great difficulty, in a taxi. And Bhaskar is very grateful to Sudhir for having brought her back in the privacy, the safety of a private car, so that the elopement does not become public knowledge. He promises to take, Sudhir promises to take Parag along with him, but he does not, for which Parag is actually quite disappointed. And so finally the play ends with them having lost the gold, which is the only connection they had to their ancestral, the link that they had with their ancestral reputation. But there is no freedom to be had. I mean, the play does not end on a note of freedom. It actually ends on a note of destruction, because the orchard is being, chopped down, cut down, and it's obviously and there's a bulldozer that is razing the entire all the trees in the orchard, and that's when the play ends, when as the orchard is being auctioned and sold off. And so that is the last link that they have to their to a particular age, to the landed reputation status they once had. So that's how the play ends. So in some sense the play also ends on a similar note to Anton Chekhov's play The Cherry Orchard, which also ends on a note of destruction, which is again symbolic of the larger socioeconomic forces of transformation in Russia, with the decline of the aristocracy, the abolition of serfdom, and the rise in the middle class. And in this case, of course, the transformation in the landed status of the rural Brahmins of Vidarbha, Maharashtra, and the rise of other caste groups, and also the mobility of social caste groups from the village to the city in search of better opportunities. But also the play seems to suggest that the city is not always a better or brighter alternative to life in the village, because we can see from Sudhir and Anjali, who also seem to have in some sense a very false sense of status, because they enjoy on one hand the elitism of being Bombay dwellers, right? The apparent class distinction of being city dwellers, and of course Anjali also being an upper caste Konkanastha Brahmin who has access to education, so there's a certain impression that the Deshpandes have of this couple, but there's also the sense that they are also constrained by their own lives in Bombay, struggling to make ends meet, working for hours in order to actually pay off the loans and mortgages on their their homes, to actually buy a 2-bedroom flat in the city. So the city is not being then pitted as a better alternative to the village, but they both seem to have their own. They're both trapped and bound by larger socioeconomic transformations. So that's our discussion of Mahesh Elkanchwar's The Old Stone Mansion. We'll be back with the discussion of another play by Mahesh Elkanchwar called Reflections, which belongs to a later phase of his career as a playwright. Thank you.